In a week where it seems like every politically obsessed nutjob on the internet got their panties in a bunch because a movie didn't pick a side politically, it seems appropriate that an old quote from Christopher Nolan himself has resurfaced. And this quote reaffirms why directors like Christopher Nolan deserve to be celebrated like no one else working in Hollywood right now. Let's discuss.
I watch so you don't have to.
All I'm offering is the truth, nothing more.
You know, if there's one thing I'm good at besides speaking the truth, it's ruffling a few feathers. But when you stop and think about it, it makes a lot of sense because those two things kind of go hand in hand. People don't like the truth because it's ugly at times. It hurts them in some situations. So chances are, if you speak your truth, people are going to hate you for it. It's a sad but true fact of life.
You can't handle the truth!
So when I say a movie like Civil War was refreshing because it didn't preach to me from a one-sided point of view and it didn't pick a side, I mean it. Even if you don't agree, that's how I perceived it. It's refreshing to me because, let's face it, we are used to seeing Hollywood pick a side. Everyone in Hollywood either thinks they know better than you, or they want to talk down to you because you don't agree with them. And the worst part is they typically do it in the most heavy-handed way possible, and they contain it within the movies that we're watching. And like it or not, that is a turnoff for some people, because most people go to a movie to be entertained, not to be lectured to. Your job as a studio, as a director, as a writer, as an actor, should be to appeal to the broadest audience possible. I don't care what you do or what you believe in your personal life. Again, I am an apolitical person. I do not give a shit. And because I don't give a shit, and a lot of other people don't give a shit, keep that garbage out of our movies. Period.
Stop it!
As I said before, there is a way to relay these messages in a film and make it feel organic. But most people working in Hollywood right now seem to be incapable of doing that, and that's the problem. So in a perfect world, if you understood your own limitations as a filmmaker, wouldn't it make sense to avoid those subjects altogether? So not to take a chance of cutting your own audience in half? It makes business sense to me. Now in Hollywood's defense, we saw this week what could happen in that situation. And ultimately you may end up getting backlash anyway if you play the middle ground. Because each side of this argument is desperately seeking validation from the movies that they watch for some reason.
S-O-F-T, soft!
The truth is that that's all noise. If you keep the focus on entertaining your audience, first and foremost, I can almost guarantee you that in general, audiences will respond to your film in a favorable way. Do not listen to social media backlash. Almost everything that is said on those platforms has no relevance to what's going on in the real world. We can all be thankful that there are still filmmakers like Christopher Nolan who understand everything I just said, and they implement this way of thinking into every film that they create. But don't take my word for it. Listen to Christopher Nolan himself talk about this very subject, because he could articulate it better than I ever could. In an excerpt from author Tom Schoen's book, The Nolan Variations, Nolan talks about how he doesn't want to make films about his political interests. He said, quote, "I've had conversations with friends of mine, and they all ask about why I don't make a film about the things I care about politically. And I always say, well, because it doesn't work. You can't use narrative to tell people what to think. It never works. People just react against it. You have to be purer about it. You have to be truer to the principles of narrative and telling a story. And that means risking misinterpretation. It doesn't mean you don't care about something or that it doesn't mean anything to you, but you have to be neutral or objective in your approach. You can't tell people what to think. You can only invite them to feel something. I always think of the great moment in Gladiator where he chops off his head and then turns to the audience and asks them, are you not entertained? Whatever it is, you've got to entertain. Can we give this man another honorary Oscar for that quote alone? I think it's safe to say at this point that Christopher Nolan understands what audiences want better than anyone working in the industry right now.
It's true.
Just the fact that he admits to us that he has people in his ear, planting that seed, asking him why he doesn't make one-sided political stories. It tells you everything you need to know about how the majority of Hollywood doesn't understand the audience they're creating content for. But Nolan is smarter than that. He gets it. In his words, it doesn't work. We already know that audiences will overreact and rage out at the first sign of something like that in a movie in the modern era. At the first sign of something in that film that doesn't line up with their beliefs. Like he says, you can't tell people what to think. And frankly, that's not a movie's job. It's true that a movie can inspire you to think, if it's well made. But above anything else, you have to make the audience feel something. You have to make them care about what's on screen. Why do you think I have a whole rating tier in my rating system that is dedicated to films that make me feel nothing?
I don't care!
Because so often I leave the theater having watched a movie that left zero emotional impact on me. And do you know whose movies never make me feel that way? Christopher Nolan, Quentin Tarantino, Martin Scorsese, David Fincher, Steven Spielberg. The list goes on. And I can't stress this part enough because I do think this is a big part of the problem in Hollywood right now. I really do feel like there are a lot of insecure people operating in Hollywood right now, and they constantly feel like they have something to prove. They want the audience to believe that they are the smartest people in the room. So they craft a movie and they inject these messages into it, poorly, because they want to appear virtuous. They want the cultural pat on the back because that's what's most important to them. It's basically them waving their arms in the air and saying, look at me, I really care about this message. But Nolan takes the mature approach. You see, he doesn't plaster this shit throughout his films, and he also understands that that doesn't mean that he doesn't care. He just understands that there is a time and place for everything, and in movies is not that place. A political message or social message shoehorned into a superhero movie or whatever the is not the way to go when it comes to delivering that message to the audience. You have to be neutral. You do not have to pick a side, regardless of what some people say. We are in the theater, we are not at the polls. We buy tickets to be entertained for a couple of hours, period. Now, of course, Nolan said all of this so eloquently, and what do you think the first comment is under this post? What Nolan doesn't realize is that this is a political point of view. I think I speak for everyone, including Christopher Nolan, when I say shut the f*** up.
Shut up. Get out.
Yeah, Christopher Nolan needs some brainlet on social media to explain to him the nuances of politics or politics in films. Because every politically obsessed troll thinks that he's a movie expert now. How about we leave analysis to the people who actually give a shit about the quality of a film beyond whether or not it tells you exactly what you want to hear. And for the love of God, leave the storytelling to people like Christopher Nolan and other directors like him. This was refreshing to hear, and it makes a ton of sense as to why I love Christopher Nolan's work so much. Beyond the fact that he is very good behind the camera, he also clearly understands the human condition better than anyone in Hollywood. And he uses that understanding to make films that resonate with larger audiences.
Y'all be cool. Right on.